Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I am naturopathic Dr. Fiona Chin, co-founder of Kidney Coach and Ketosis, and I'm joined again today by the amazing, wonderful, fabulous, fantastic Kelly Csom. Kelly is a renal dietitian with a specialty in kidney-related diabetes or diabetes-causing kidney disease, the bidirectional thing that goes there. She's part of the K&I team. And Kelly, I always love Kelly because she's just so amazing in how she portrays and is able to make complex information digestible and simple. I think that's your superhuman strength, Kelly. So thank you for joining me again. Always love having you on here.
Thank you, Fiona. I always love being here.
So I know we've got some big, amazing things in the pipeline that you and the team at K&I are doing when it comes to diabetes and putting together a really cool program specifically for diabetes and kidney disease. And we're going to talk more about that in upcoming podcasts when that's getting closer. But one of the things that you've been working with a lot, and, you know, we've seen it with Dr. Ian Lake where he's using it, and we know it works in PKD, but it's this plant-based ketogenic diet and why that the plant-based side of it is so important for the kidneys, and then the ketogenic part really works in with the diabetes. And so what I'd love to talk to you today about is that a big overview, because I think when it comes to ketogenic diets, I still find people get confused and they think that means high protein when it doesn't, it means high fat. And then beyond that, people get very, very confused about how do you do a plant-based ketogenic, because I thought I needed to be eating fat and bacon and, you know, all these things that aren't good for my kidneys. So how do I implement that? So how does that sound? I think if we could start with why ketogenic diets are so great for diabetes, and then let's talk about, I think most people understand the plant-based part in kidney disease, but if you can dive into the ketogenic side in diabetes, and then let's talk about how we get it plant-based ketogenic successfully.
Yeah, absolutely. So with ketogenic, the basic thing is it's the switch of the fuel source. So generally, when we eat foods that are heavy carbohydrates, so potatoes, candy, bread, rice, those kinds of things, those break down into glucose, sugar, and that is a fuel source that our body uses for energy. With ketogenic, we're going to take that high fat or that high carb diet, and we're going to take that down to very little carbs. So instead of using the carbohydrates or the glucose for energy, we're actually going to do a high fat, low carb diet, which is going to cause our body to make ketones. And ketones then becomes the main fuel source. And ketones are really the magic. There are actually different kinds of ketones, but the special ketone is the BHB. And so the BHB, what it does in PKD, like what we work with, it helps to cut off the sugar source for the cysts that are growing. So that's the key there. But in diabetes, the root there is the inflammation. And so the BHB actually helps to reduce the inflammation. And once that inflammation comes down and we don't need all that sugar, our need for insulin and diabetes medicines starts to reduce. We start to lose weight, which means we're losing visceral or belly fat. And that's really what causes that flaming fire, that metabolic system, right? Because metabolic disease is a host of poor health markers that put us at risk for diabetes and heart disease and kidneys too. It all comes down to the heart, guys. That's really what this is about. And so when you are a lady and you have a waist larger than 35, or men a waist larger than 40, when you have high blood pressure, when you have high cholesterol, if your good cholesterol is low and your bad cholesterol is high, those are all, and your blood sugars are high, those are all markers or metabolic syndrome. Okay. And so keto does a beautiful job of reducing it. So I was going to lead to something else, but I'll let you lead me.
Oh, no, I was just, I'm sitting here in awe of just how, like I said before when I introduced you, of how good you are at just making complex simple so people can. So I was like mesmerized by what you're saying. But so I think that's a great point. So when we have things like metabolic disorders, which they're so common now, I don't know if you know the stats on it, and I don't know off the top of my head, but obesity being such, is it 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 Americans, might even be higher, are obese. And obviously I'm more likely to get this metabolic group of symptoms that you're talking about, which is high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and then this insulin resistance. Did you want to dip more into insulin resistance and how that works and how the ketones and BHP works with that insulin resistance piece, since you're so good at making complex easy to understand?
Yeah, well, like I said, the base of it is really, it helps our body to use insulin better. So when you have a lot of visceral fat, or you have these poor health markers that we talked about that make metabolic syndrome, what happens is we become what's called insulin resistant. So you have an organ in your body called a pancreas, and your pancreas is lined with these little cells called beta cells. And I like to think of your pancreas as a factory and your beta cells like the workers, okay? And so when you have something like prediabetes, or when you first get diagnosed with diabetes, half your factory has already been laid off. So you've already lost half your beta cells. So it's already running inefficiently, okay? Which means that we're not making enough insulin, and the insulin that we're making isn't working properly, because how insulin works is it's like a bus that carries sugar over to the cells, and think of your cells as having a little lock there. And think of the bus as having a key on the front, and it kind of opens the cell up, it lets the sugar off, it goes into the cell, and your body makes energy. What happens when we have a large waist, when we have metabolic syndrome, is it's like having a linebacker or putty in the door, okay? So you've got this visceral fat that acts as resistance. So now insulin cannot open the cell to let the sugar in. So what happens is the sugar builds up in the blood, okay? And this is where our blood sugars get high. And this is how we end up getting diagnosed with prediabetes and then diabetes. So it causes our body's insulin, the insulin that we're making, which again, at this stage, because of our poor health, we could be making less in general. That's one problem. And then the bigger problem is now we've got to go against that big linebacker, the visceral fat, or the insulin resistance that our body has created. Does that make sense?
100%. So using that analogy, what now happens when we switch to a high fat diet as our main fuel source? What happens to our line buses?
Yes.
Our linebackers and our buses.
Yeah. So what happens is, first of all, our body is going to, some of that sugar I told you that builds up in the blood, first our body's going to try to store some of that, kind of like a reserve, right? For emergencies. And so it's going to put some of that in our muscles, and some of it will be stored in our liver. Okay. And so again, over time, that's how some people can end up with fatty liver disease from all this accumulation of sugar, okay, that's being stored there. So with ketosis and with the ketones, what happens is that first probably 48 hours, the first thing your body does is it depletes all of those extra stores. So the muscles and the liver are going to release that sugar, okay? And so we don't have any extra sugar. And so your body needs a source because it's used up its last reserve tanks, like a water tower, kind of holds extra water for the city. And so now it has to find a fuel source. So what it does is it takes the fat that we've ingested from the diet and it breaks it down into ketone bodies. And these ketone bodies then are used as fuel sources. And so again, that helps to really reduce all of the extra sugar and the fat cells start to shrink and all these things. That's where we get such great weight loss. Now, we do get a little water loss in the beginning, like any other reduced diet plan that you may follow. So, the first couple of weeks, you might lose a little extra weight, but some of that's just water coming off. Okay. But then after that, we're going to start to get some of that visceral fat, and that will start to come down. So that's kind of how that works.
And what are the other benefits of being in ketosis when it comes to things like diabetes and kidney disease? Because I guess too, people are like, well, we don't want high protein because we don't want the leakage of protein through the urine. Is there a problem being high fat? Is that going to leak through the kidneys? Is it going to cause any damage? Pros and cons, benefits. How does that relate to kidney disease?
So again, your standard keto diet is going to be a high protein, probably, diet out there. Most of them that you see on the web are going to be like that. And so if you have kidney disease, that extra protein is really going to work over the kidneys. Your kidneys are going to have to filter all of that, and your filtering system in the kidneys is already not at its best once we have kidney disease, and depending on what stage you're at. And so it's going to be real important that you're eating the right amount of protein. So it's important to work with a professional. For example, folks, we use keto with our people with polycystic kidney disease, and they're going to do a moderate protein diet. Okay. But somebody who has diabetes and chronic kidney disease, we're going to do between a low protein and a moderate protein. So again, it's going to be very personalized to the individual and what's going on. So we're definitely not doing high protein, and because we want to protect those kidneys. And that really is the magic of maintaining or improving kidney health. I've seen that working with KNI, is that low protein. The other secret that we do special at KNI is we do plant-based. What does that mean, and why do we do that? One of the biggest cons to the keto diet is constipation. And so we remedy that by getting enough fiber and eating enough plants. The other thing that eating plants does is it helps the body to be more alkaline, which again impacts inflammation. And inflammation is really the root to diabetes. It has a huge effect on kidney decline, and it's just the root to so many diagnosed diseases out there. So we definitely want to put that fire out and reduce that. So that's the combination that we use to get amazing results.
So walk me through, what does a typical ketogenic plant-based diet for someone with diabetes and kidney disease look like? What would someone be expecting to eat?
Yeah. So for example, now we're not vegans here. Okay. So when I say plant-based, that doesn't mean you have to give up all your animal protein. We're just going to reduce it. And we're going to do this on a personalized basis, right? Because we're all at different readiness. And so one person may have eggs with some peppers and some onions. So like a small little omelet in the morning. Mm-hmm. Somebody else might have a tofu scramble. Okay. Other things that we do in the morning are smoothies. So smoothies that are made with heavy coconut milk and just a little bit of berries. Berries tend to be the lowest in carbohydrates. So we might use a little bit of that. We might put some avocado in, which makes it thicker and creamier. And maybe we're putting in some flaxseed, again, to increase our omega-3s, which help combat that inflammation. So we might have a smoothie recipe in the morning. We have our own low-carb cereal that's made from nuts and different low-carb grains that we might have. You could find, this would be a little more processed. There's a lot of low-carb bread-like products out there nowadays. So you could do that and do like an avocado toast or, some kind of vegetable or green on there. That's really good in the morning. So there's really a lot of options. You'd be really surprised at your choices. And once you get the hang of it, it becomes very easy.
Mm. So walk me through. So we've had breakfast, and are you snacking on this sort of thing, or is it 3 meals a day?
Yeah. So again, it really depends on the individual. So when we first start, number one, to start something like this, it's very important if you have diabetes and you're taking any kind of medicine that puts you at risk for low blood sugars. Okay. So like glyburide, for example, or if you're on any kind of insulin, it's going to be really important. We would recommend that you're wearing a CGM to monitor your blood sugars, because I have seen people who do this within the first 1 to 3 weeks who start to reduce their diabetes medicine. And by week 3, some of them are completely off all diabetes medicines.
Yeah.
So it's really important, because you don't want to end up with low blood sugar. That can be very dangerous. And so things like insulin and, like I said, some of those other medications can definitely put you at risk. We'll want to monitor. And as soon as we start seeing a couple of lows, we'll have you call your physician and let your physician know what you're doing so that they're ready, or they could give you a self-lowering medication regimen. Like with insulin, sometimes they'll let you bring that down yourself so many units every so many days, depending on where your blood sugars are. So wearing a CGM, having a ketone monitor, a blood monitor is the most accurate. We like Keto Mojo. So having those things on board are important. Okay. Also, when you start a ketosis diet plan, it's real important that you do it right. Keto flu is a real thing, people. So I did this on my own one time before I knew too much about it, and I had the keto flu, and it wasn't fun. So you'll have a horrible headache. You'll just feel weak and tired and nauseous, and it just feels horrible. So it's real important that you are hydrated and that you're getting the proper amount of electrolytes during those first few days as your body switches from glucose to ketones. That's going to be real important, probably the first 4 to 5 days, to make sure that you're feeling okay. And then you won't have any problems if you do it the right way. So again, working with a professional for the first time really can make a difference in doing this safely and to help you achieve the goals that you're looking at achieving.
Great. And run me through the rest of the day. So lunch, dinner, what's that as just as an example? What sort of food?
Yeah. So we might have something like some kind of vegetable soup. Believe it or not, a lot of people are going to get a lot of their protein from non-starchy vegetables. People don't even realize you get protein from vegetables.
No, it's very true.
And so you're going to get a good amount just from all the vegetables you're eating. So you might have something like, either for lunch or dinner, something like a zucchini boat. So you can take and hollow out zucchini, put a little bit of tomato sauce, a little bit of cheese, and because we use some dairy in there. And then also you might have whatever vegetables that you want on there. And they're kind of like little zucchini pizzas, and they're so good, and they freeze well and they warm up well. So you might have, one of my favorite things to have for lunch is I would have a big salad. So whatever greens that you like. And then one of my favorite nuts that's lower in protein, that has a lot of fat for keto, is the, I'm just blanking out of what it is. What is that thing called? Macadamia. Yeah. Thank you. Macadamia nuts. And then I would do a little bit of blackberries and a really good a high fat, low carb dressing of your choice. So I would do like a Asiago cracked pepper one that I really liked. I found that had 1 gram of carbs. So that was delicious and really filling. You might have a dinner where you have some grilled salmon and you have whatever vegetable that you'd like to pair with it. You might have portobello steaks. You might have low carb fajitas, or low carb tacos. So there, honestly, if you can dream it up, you could have a stir fry where you use cauliflower rice as your base. So we do a lot of very interesting things that are really yummy. And you would be surprised if you just Google, even though we don't do vegan, if you were to Google keto vegan, you won't believe all the recipes out there. So there's a lot of really good stuff that can help you learn how to modify. So you just think of, what am I hungry for? And then what do I need to modify to kind of bring those carbs down?
So it really is low carb, and that's to bring down the blood sugar, stop the little buses, high fat, protein, depending on what level of kidney disease you're at, either low protein if you're in the later stages or moderate. And then it's still an alkalizing diet, which we know has plays such an important role in kidney disease, high vegetables, and then staying really, really hydrated. Are you allowed coffee on this diet?
Yes. Matter of fact, we do some lovely bulletproof coffee. So you put some MCT oil in, you put some heavy cream in. So, you could do, like I said, we don't do a completely animal free on this, but if you wanted to, brands like Silk make a heavy cream, which is plant-based. So there's a lot of options to allow you. And again, we use a food tool that allows us to see how alkaline we're keeping the diet, which is kind of one of your parameters. So we've got protein, and we have this other tool that we use within our food records that allow you to kind of see how much animal you can put in and still keep your body alkaline. So it just gives you more flexibility. And our whole goal is to make this sustainable. If this is not sustainable, then, anyone can do anything for a short term. But if we can't learn to make this into a lifestyle, or combine this and bridge this into a low carb, right? Or maybe we alternate keto and low carb a little bit. So there's a lot of different things we can do to make this sustainable for folks to be able to not just achieve their goals, but to maintain their goals once they achieve them, because we all know that's when the work begins.
And what sort of results, you talked about people, in 3 weeks, potentially even dropping their medication altogether. What sort of results have you seen with people adopting this type of diet when it comes to diabetes and diabetic kidney disease?
Yeah, so I've seen anywhere from a 2 to 4 pound per week weight loss, depending on if it's men or women. So that's been pretty standard. The other thing that I've seen standard is, like I said, probably because usually we do a 12-week program. So that's really important. This is not something you're going to do in a week. This is not something you're going to do in a month. So this is something you want to take some time and really work on. And so I would say in the 12 weeks, at least by the halfway point, by 6 weeks, I have everybody off their diabetes medicines. So, and I had somebody who recently was on 90 units of long-acting insulin and 50 units of mealtime insulin. In 3 weeks, they were off all insulin. They were still on a GLP-1, but they had an A1C of 6.4 on all that medicine. And we just recently took an A1C, and on just one diabetes medicine, he was on 2 insulins and 2 different diabetes medicines to get that. And he maintained his A1C.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And so just the savings in medicine alone paid for the program.
Yeah.
So he was thrilled. Also, he had a lot of inflammation from gout, and his pain and his gout flares greatly reduced. I had an unusual thing happen with one of my ladies from the loss of visceral fat. Okay. And so she is in her 70s and was having some urinary incontinence, which can happen to a lot of ladies. And so by reducing that visceral fat, she used to use a heavy hygiene product to, make sure that things were all kept nice, I guess I'm trying to say this politely. She didn't require buying any kind of ladies products at the end of the program. So that completely went away.
Amazing. So you're getting some great results.
Yeah. So weight loss, coming off of diabetes and medicines. I have people who are sleeping better than they've ever slept. The other thing that's been really fun, and this is really hard for people to wrap their head around. I'm in my 50s, and so I grew up in the, let's eat everything low fat and wear our leg warmers, right?
Yep.
And so when people do keto, they have the hardest thing I see with people is they think apple healthy, not nuts or olive oil or MCT oil.
Yeah.
So getting that mind shift is probably the biggest hurdle in the beginning for folks. But I had somebody who had a family history as well as his own having really high triglycerides. They had triglycerides over 500. And at the end of 12 weeks, they were 140.
Wow.
From eating all that fat. So on keto, you're eating of your calories, probably 70 to some as high as 85% of your calories are going to come straight from fat.
What are your favorite fat sources on this diet?
My favorite fat sources are, one, the macadamia nuts, even though there's some protein that you are going to spend a little bit of your protein bank account there. But probably my favorite of all, as long as you tolerate it well, is MCT oil. So the reason I like MCT oil is it skips the gut and goes straight to the liver for a fuel source. So we use it like kindling on a fire. Okay. You want your campfire to burn hotter and brighter. You need to add more kindling on there, right? And so that's what MCT oil is. And so we have people add a tablespoon of MCT oil to all their meals. And some people might be taking 2 or 3. So we use it as targeted therapy. Now, as you increase that, some people can have some tummy trouble with it. That's what I mean about being tolerated. But if you can't, I've had other people be able to do a spoonful of olive oil or other oils. So I really like those. I really like fat bombs too. So making with coconut oil and cream cheese and different ingredients like that make some really good fat bombs. And whether or not that you can, if you have PKD, you can't really do a lot of oxalates. So you have to be careful of different nut butters. So you would do something like a sunflower butter. And if you don't, almond butters, all of those, those make some really good fat bombs. You might have to put them in the freezer to keep them away from your paws there.
Perfect. And so we've covered all of that. So that was a good thing that you mentioned, that fat can make up from 70 to 80% of your caloric intake. I think people don't realize that. So we've got, and then of course you've got things like olives and avocado and all those.
Yes. And avocado will really make a huge difference in how alkaline your body is. It's amazing that just, a couple pieces of avocado can change how alkaline your diet is. So again, unless your potassium has been crazy high, it's a really good fat for most folks. So
perfect. So what else do people need to know about this, Kelly? And as you mentioned, I want to reiterate, it's not something I would recommend people go and suddenly jump on and do at home, because like you say, there's the keto flu. There's the just doing it properly, getting the right fat sources, making sure your diet's still alkaline. And of course, the risk of hypos if you are on any diabetic sort of type of medication that needs to be monitored. So are there any other definite do's and don'ts when it comes to this?
So again, especially people who are on insulin, okay, I would, or if you're a type 1, I would definitely check with your doctor first. You definitely want them to know what you're doing, and they need to partner with you to safely come off your medicines. You're also going to need to monitor your blood pressure, because your blood pressure is going to, that was the other benefit I forgot to mention. A lot of times I've seen people come down 20 points in both their diastolic and systolic. So That's been pretty fun to watch as well. And you just asked me something, I completely blanked out.
No, they were the big things, just the do's and the definite do's.
Yeah. So again, if you have diabetes, the other thing and why that blood ketone monitor is so important is you don't want to have ketones over 3. You don't want to end up in metabolic acidosis. That can be dangerous for people with diabetes. And so again, somebody with type 1 is going to be much more at risk than somebody with type 2. But we definitely want to keep an eye, and you need to know safely where those ketones need to be and what do we do if they are running high. And, just like we would with hypoglycemia, right? It can be safely managed or it can get out of control. So you really need to know what you're doing. And I would say the other thing is the frustration point, because it's really hard to go from an almost all carb diet, which is so American with, crappy processed fat, to this high fat, healthy, cardiovascular, healthy fats that are going to mostly make up your diet. How do you find meals? How do you put them together and get the macros right so that your ketones go in the right zone? That is the hardest thing. And it takes probably most of my clients a good 3 to 4 weeks to really get the light bulb to go off, to be like, I get it. I get this meal planning. So having somebody to assist you with those meals and making sure that there's no holes in your micronutrients, that's going to be really important. And like I said, in a standard keto diet, you're going to be missing a lot of fiber. And so constipation can be another big problem, which with kidney disease, we know is a problem because it can raise your potassium if all of that's locked in there.
Yeah. Oh, they're great tips. So if anyone wants to work with you, they can head across to the kidneynutritionalinstitute.org website, which I'll put in the show notes below. Anything else you want to let people know about this, Kelly, before we start?
Yeah. So anyone that wants to work with us individually, they can come work with us now at any time. But we're also going to offer a group program in January of 2024. So we're super excited. That's a great way to get to know other folks who are walking through the same things that you're walking through and be able to do it in a group. We do this on our PKD side of kidney disease, and it's been very, very successful. So look for that to come. And again, if it's something that you're like, I'm ready, it's a fall's a great time to kind of make those lifestyle changes before the holidays come in, definitely come see us. We'd love to work with you.
Amazing. And I just want to reiterate, especially if you've got type 1, but even type 2, you should really be working with a healthcare practitioner, at least at the very beginning, till you get your head around it, checking that your insulin levels are okay, where you're at with your medication, blood pressure, or blood glucose medication, and all those things, making sure you're alkaline enough. And there's so many benefits. As you mentioned, I think people don't realize how anti-inflammatory a high-fat diet can be when it's not all the saturated, adulterated, heated fats, and when you keep it alkaline. And I think there's so many benefits. I eat a ketogenic diet. That's how I manage my health sort of stuff. So
and one of the things too, a couple of things I had forgotten to mention is we do a subjective pain scale. We ask some questions during the program to measure progress. And we've had people, when we look at inflammation or like joint pain, who've been maybe a 7 in the beginning, who've come down to a 2 or a 1. So that's been really fun to be able to see. And so again, there's a lot of benefits. Actually, ketosis, the history of it is it started with epilepsy. I think in the 1920s is really made a difference with people with epilepsy. That's really how that diet was used. And now it's being hugely used with people with diabetes, definitely epilepsy, cancer, because of the inflammation again, people, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. So there's some big brain benefits. We noticed when we had this era, we went all low fat, we started to see all this Alzheimer's, all this brain disease start to really increase. It's because we need the fat. If you hear nothing tonight, fat is good. The right fat is good, folks. So don't be afraid of it.
No, I totally agree. You know, it's what your brain is mostly fat. And it's the same with MS. We use a lot of ketogenic diets because the myelin gets attacked. The myelin is fat. So I think there is a healthy fat deficiency in our world, that people are eating so much of the saturated, adulterated stuff and not enough of the good stuff, which, like you say, depression, anxiety, energy, all very dependent on good sources of fat. So,
and it's funny, Fiona, because everybody says to me, I never thought I'd work with a dietitian who's always telling me to eat, because when you eat fat, you're full, right? It gives us flavor. It gives us satiety. So we're satisfied. So we don't need as much. And so sometimes probably the biggest struggle is people getting enough calories.
Yeah.
And so again, you're going to have your dietitian telling you to eat. Can you imagine?
I know. It's amazing. I love it. Kelly, you're amazing as always. Again, if you want to work with Kelly individually, this is what she does. She's an absolute expert when it comes to all things diabetes and kidney disease. So you can head across to kidneynutritionalinstitute.org. I'll put the link in below and all the details are there. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel. That way you'll get notified anytime we put out more content. And if there's anything that you want Kelly to talk about, like I say, she's a genius at being able to take complex high-level scenarios is a wrong word, but complex ideas, and put them into a way that most people can understand, which is her gift. So if there's anything you want to have Kelly explain around kidney disease and diabetes, please make sure you put it in the comments below and we'll get her on board to do that, because she's so great at it. Kelly, thank you for your time and your wisdom.
Thanks, Fiona. Thanks, everyone.
And we'll definitely have you back before January to talk about the program in more detail so people can get some ideas about how they can join and do that. I think that's going to be really exciting.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you. Thanks for being part of our community. We'll see you next time. Bye.